Hello there, and welcome to day number 2 of Inktober Tangles 2024. Yes, I'm back. The second day. Don't know how long this video is going to take me. Hopefully not more than an hour. You know, brain drain and all of that. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for the lovely comments about Ambler. I realised when I was doing it, I'll just move these out the way. So, got some stuff out ready. That I'd forgotten a lot of things that I would instinctively do when it comes to tangling, things like adding ink in corners and where things join. So I did that here. I have finished this one now. Excuse the table wobbling. I'm going to be fidgety, I can tell it. I think you'll cope though. Well, I hope you will. Look at that, it's a bit of a stencil. All right, okay. I was looking through my stencils and I'll explain that in a moment. But I've added shading to all of this, some ink in corners to help to bring out some three-dimensionality, and just basic shading and underneath and so on, and just messing around with it, just all in the shade of grey. And to me it looks very grey. No, yeah, but it's fine. So I'm going to move on to day 2. And today's pattern, I'll show you what I've got, because Ambler was an easy one for me, kind of, because I was already familiar with it. But I still went to a sketchbook yesterday evening, and just to let you know, I discovered more variations, or I did more variations, as it were. I wanted to record ideas, and I did an even crazier kind of grid there. But these ones are interesting, and this, where different shapes are put together, and even sort of like pointy ovals. I don't know what ovals are, but they're ovals really, but they're pointy ovals. So pointy ovals are now to be called ovals, which I'll instantly forget. But again, playing with that idea of in places extra bits of ink and so on. So my mind just going, and then this one, drawing a single one, but with a space in it, which could be filled with pattern or whatever. I haven't got that far because I wanted to have a look at today's tangle, which is called MaryShel, and it's by Alena Light. And again, in the description, I'll put the link to where you can download for free the tangle prompts, which all have a link to step outs for the tangles. And this one kind of vexed me in some ways because I couldn't get mine looking like MaryShel. But thanks to Zentangle, who's an amazing tangler, I love her work. She uses light and dark, contrast and shadow, highlight and shadow to great effect with her tangles. Very precise and very beautiful. And again, I'll put a link to her YouTube channel in the description, but Zentangle. And I saw her, and one of the things she said is that don't get hooked up on perfection. Your tangles won't look the same. She didn't quite say that, but the meaning was there. Is that we all draw things in different ways, and even if they're not the same as the originator of it or other people, like Alena Lights, that's fine. You're following the methodology and creating ones of your own, which I'd already done. So I watched her video after I did all of these. And I thought, yeah, I needed to hear that to remind myself that I'm not replicating tangles here exactly. I'll show you how I construct them or how they're constructed, and then I'll go off on tangents, which may or may not look anything like these, but we shall see. But what I thought I'd do today as well, which is why you can see a stencil, a brush, and a piece of cut and dry foam, and also a tin of distress inks, is I wanted a coloured background for today, and for some reason I've chosen brown. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use tone on tone, so I want a very subtle texture pattern in the background. So I'm going to use a palish coloured distress ink. I'm going to go with my favourite Rusty Hinge. I may put some darker ink around the edges, but I'm just going to tap it on here and very lightly. I'm just going to add colour here to this page, like so. I'll turn it round. I'll try not to get my fingers too mucky here or leave fingerprints in it. I slept like the proverbial dead last night. I think I've slept for over 12 hours. in total from yesterday evening, where I unexpectedly, I just fell asleep for a couple of hours. I was exhausted. And then I went to bed about, I don't know, 10:30, 11. And I certainly was asleep not long after 11 o'clock. And I woke up at nearly 10 o'clock this morning. I woke up a couple of times through the evening, but nothing major, or through the night. I was back to sleep very quickly afterwards. So I must have really needed it. Too much peopling in a short space of time. But that's okay. I'm now tangling, and I don't have peopling to do for a while, which is nice. I like people, but I have to be careful not to do too much of it. As I say, I'm quite an introvert in my own way. I put a display on of extroversion, but I'm really quite introverted. And I also find it hard to, I mask that introversion and try to fit in and so on. And it is very draining. So around the edges, just to make these just that little bit more interesting, I suppose, to add some darkness to the edge and to really bring the edge of this paper out. And on this side, I am going to just move it in a little bit past my little mushroom holes where the binding is. So I've got this going on here, and it just frames the page. Makes the paper look quite aged, doesn't it? So I've got that. I'll go back to my rusty brown, my rusty hinge. Couldn't remember the name of it. No hope today. I'm just going to clean my brush off a bit. That's why this paper was mucky, because I wanted to make sure there weren't strange colours like purple on the cut and dry foam. Now this stencil is it's a bit larger scale than I'd like, but it's okay because I'm not going to cover the whole paper with it. So I'm just putting some subtle hints in the background of this, just to add some interest. And as the ink wears off my brush, we'll get different tones and so on. And there, that's it. I think I need a bit more ink just here. Now, distress inks are water-based, so if I wanted to, I could sort of spray this with water and get water drops. I'm not interested in that today. I want a nice, fairly simple background that will work for this. So I'm just going to pop my brush back in its place. I'll pop the stencil to one side because it will need a bit of a clean, but it's not essential I do it here and now. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to annoy you ever so slightly because I am going to use a heat tool just to make sure that the ink is all nice and dry and set in the paper so that I can continue working on this paper. I'm heating the back just to make sure that I get it back to flat and just give it that little bit of a helping hand just to dry and set that in. I'd normally like to wait a day or so before I do use this. You get rid of that scuzzy paper. So I've got a very subtle texture. It looks quite textured on, like it's a lot more contrast than there is here. But where they look like there are white places, let me have a look. Can I turn the brightness of this down? How do I do that? Here. There, that's a bit more like what I can see. It's a bit darker than what I can see, but perhaps put the saturation up a little bit. No, I've got bright red hands. That's not good, is it? But you get the idea. It's not as insipid as it appears. So I'm going to do the same as I did yesterday once I find my glasses. Remember I put a 1/2 inch border around. Let's try and get it the right way round so I'm not measuring in centimetres. With a pencil. And I chose to do the distress ink first because I know from experience that distress inks or any other dye-based ink, if you use them on top of like a Sakura Micron, or I'm using Unipin pens as well, that the ink will move the pigment off the paper and smear it. So I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to make sure that I started here. Just bring it down a little bit less than half an inch. There we go. So I've now got my border on. I'm just looking. Have I got this straight? I don't think I have from this one. See, don't talk, Angela. Concentrate. Yeah, that's better. The others are fine. It was just that one was a bit off. Not that much. It's got to be an optical illusion with the shading and everything. And again, I just want to put some lines here where I can just add my lettering for the name of the tangle and also the person who deconstructed it, as well as the date. So I'm going to get where's my book? It's there. Let me bring that back so I can see what I did, because, I want to keep it pretty much the same, don't I? So I don't know if you noticed as well on this, I thickened the left-hand line on each letter. Didn't do the number though, so I can do that now. Just the vertical line, just to give it some oomph. So, because it was looking a bit, insipid and fine, but that's fine. So this one is MaryShel. Okay, yeah. So today is day 2. So I'll just put a number 2 here. There's a fancy schmancy one, isn't it? So I'm just going to add some fancy schmancy shading there. Excuse me as I move myself back so I can sort of put myself down. And then it's going to be MaryShel. So again, I'm going to add some fancy schmancy shading. So literally what I try to think of as the downstrokes. Mary, and because I'm not very good at the S's, so I think it's sort of like it's either one word or 2 words. I don't think it matters too much, but I'm not very good at hand-drawn lettering at the moment, or fake calligraphy, because I'm out of practice again. But this is a perfect opportunity to practice such things. It's not just about tangles for me. It's about all aspects of art, using different materials. I might even do some collage on a page. And this is by, I can move that one out the way now because that's good. Finished with that. MaryShel, and it's by Alena Light. So there we go. We've got her name there. So I'll just very quickly add some weighting to the lines. It's a bit more fancy schmancy, but I think that goes with the kind of tangle. Ambler was a very sort of like, it's quite a geometric, very business-like, I suppose, kind of tangle. No fuss and fancy. But this one's a little bit different. So I am going to do my border on this. So I may not always prepare paper with you. I may do this in advance and put the pencil lines and everything in. But I thought it's a useful start to a video. It doesn't take that long to do. Actually, I might, because there are many ways that I will draw letters and use letters and lettering. and it might be useful for you to see and to hopefully follow, because I had it on camera. I can't guarantee I did. But I do like a border, don't I? And I'm going to do a border here. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with this one. I'll leave it as a double one. I may just come back. So I'm not sure whether I'm just going to shade these or whether I'm going to use colour, watercolour them. Watercolouring's fine with distress inks. I will use the lose that background texture if I use water soluble media, because the distress ink always reacts with water, as in always dissolves in water. It's not a chemical reaction, but water will make it disappear off the page, and it won't muddy up the any colours that I use, because even though it looks quite dark, actually there's very little ink here and it makes hardly any difference to things like watercolours. But we shall see how I feel. Okay, so how do we draw this? Well, the first step in it is I'm doing a backwards S. You can do a forwards S if you like, but it's an S shape. So a double curve with a wobbly bit. And let's see if this will work on zooming me in. For some reason, everything else works on this, but not the zoom in. Why is that? Talk about ridiculousness. It's having a hissy fit, so I'll move you in. I hope I don't make you too seasick, but there we are, a little bit closer, even with a little wobbly bit. And then I'm going to go move it so I can draw with my hand out the way, hopefully. And I'm just going to aura this. I'm using an 05 pen because I thought with this one I may want to use different weights, line weights, different thicknesses of pen. I've left a little bit on the end here as well. I quite like having that little, a little bit tailing off. Now then, in the original version, I'm going to draw from the bottom and up to somewhere like this, and again from the bottom and up like this. I think this one should be smaller, but it is what it is, and I'm going to put a third one on because I quite like this shape that's generated here. And I am going to use a finer pen. I've got an 03, and I'm just going to add a line auraing just the bottom part of this, and I'm making it quite a fine aura. I quite like this. It separates the sections in a nice way. It also adds some ink, which adds a feeling of shadow, dimension. So that's one version of it. And part of me just wants to put perhaps a very wobbly but fine aura on that side as well. But we can do things with the other side. So let's have a look and see what I can do here. Do it the same way. Made a thinner one of these here, so this is going to look different. And I'm going to start at the bottom, and I've made this more a continuation of this curve and line here. Perhaps I can do the same here and here. So I've got a slightly different way of joining these together. They're not quite so like lobes, they're more like sections. Again, I'm going to use my 03 just to put little sections between them. And this outer one, I'm going to put it on the outside. Then on this side, there's a number of things we can do. I'm going to put a shape in that's a bit like, it's another vague S shape. It's got a very little top, but a big bottom. And I'm going to just carry that little line on. There's something about having that little pointy bit that makes me happy. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw almost like little curves that get smaller and smaller, as if this is going behind or going underneath this section, and we're getting this rather nice kind of shell shape. Now, if I'd made the S shape wider, we could have enhanced this, but it is what it is, and I may try that another time. So that's a nice way to do things. But let's have a look at making actually a more pronounced S shape. And again, doing the aura. Do the same here. So this is going to be quite different because of the shape. And the last one, I did make it as a simple curve. And here then, we can bring that back round. And I am going to, this time, aura inside this. So it looks more like the opening of a shell. And then, it's the other way of doing this, that's right. So now I'm just going to aura this down like so. And the last one just like that. So it's similar to this, but the shapes are different because I made this different to begin with. And it almost looks like it's curling back on itself. It's quite fun. I have to say, these are fun to draw. Okay, one more. And I can't help but put that in there. For whatever reason, it feels a necessary part. I say one more, I'm going to end up filling all of this. You know that, don't you? There are so many ways of drawing these S shapes. There really are. So this one, I'm going to start at the bottom again. And I'm really going to just let it carry on out and around. Each section getting that little bit smaller. I think I can bring my camera in even further, can't I, for you? Let's have a look. Okay. There we go. If it needs to be off auto lock to zoom in and out. No, it doesn't make any difference. Autofocus lock is what I meant. Okay. And then I could leave it just like this, perhaps with a little bit at the bottom. That's actually quite nice. I like that. But so I'll draw another one then, because I like that one. The more you draw them, the more comfortable you get with drawing shapes like this and designs like this. And it's taken me a while to work this one out for myself. But they're all variations on the same kind of method, aren't they? So this one's got a completely different feel because I've really got that end hooking around, haven't I? So that's really quite a different. I didn't have the sharp curve at the top, I had it at the bottom. So I've got a completely different feel to that one. How interesting. And it almost feels that I want to put the opening here. Like so. I like that. That's really nice. That really is. And I've got that lovely shape, and I am going to put that there. So it really does look like an opening. Okay. And I also drew it the opposite direction, didn't I? Yeah, because I'm drawing it as an S shape, as I did here. That's why they look so different. That's a backwards S. That one's a backwards S, but this one I did a forward way. How interesting. Well, I say interesting. I should have more sense, shouldn't I? Let's see if we can replicate something like that. I think I'm going to be able to by doing the backwards S. Let's have a look and see. I'd have to bring those around this way, wouldn't I? So I'm going to pop those in here first. I'm going to take that tail around there and then pop that in. Okay. Again, these kinds of shapes. That little one there. That feels a bit odd, but it's still quite nice. Really like these ones though. Yeah. That one's really nice though. Perhaps I could use my O1. There's a decent O1. And I'm just going to pop in some border lines. Little borders, the edges, just to add some detail to begin with, but also to help to separate these sections from each other. This one I'm not going to do that because I've got such a tiny amount on that side. Here I don't need to really. This one I'm going to, yeah, I will do that, but I'll do that on the bottom edge. Like so. Just to bring that out. I almost feel that I need to do that on this side as well, just for consistency. And this one feels a little bit odd there, but it's fine now. Like that. This one. Add some underneath here. I do like these little borders that just help to separate the sections and just add some detail. And they accent the shape that we've got. And that little empty space between any pattern I put in really will make me quite happy. Okay, so let's have a look. I'm going to go this way again. I'm going to do a shape like this. And then here, I'm going to go around like this. And perhaps just one more. And it's starting to make a kind of onion shape or a gourd shape. But I am going to do that kind of shape here. I really am. And this one, I'm just going to put a little spiral on the end. And in here, it feels that it needs lines that tuck under, like so, as if we've got a hole going in there. May not have got these quite the right shape actually, but we'll work with it, and I am going to fill that in black. So it looks like there's something inside that is much darker. I do like that. That's a nice one. It's nice. Nice. Okay. Another one. Oh, it's an odd shape. I've added an extra curve at the end of it. Okay, we'll work with it. So it's basically an S shape. It's just gone a bit odd at the end, which is fine. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to work on this side of it first, and I'm going to add some shapes like this. And yeah, I'm extending the point of the S shape, and I'm really creating a kind of shell shape here. Let's just add that there. Again, so it looks a bit more like there might be an opening there. And then on this side, I'm just going to add some shapes like that, just to complete the top there of that shell. So it does look like a shell. Okay. Interesting. Part of me wants to sketch these out, the kind of shape or the way I want that to go. So let's have a look, because I'd have preferred this. I might prefer one that's more of an overall shape like this. So I'm just putting almost like a fat teardrop. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to decide where I put that S shape, like so. And then I want to try to create these lobes that echo the shape that I want. So that's my first one. It feels more natural to work from the bottom with this one. And again here, just allowing them to work up the stem, you know, that first bit a little bit. That actually works quite nicely. And I'm going to do the same on this side where I have the largest lobes at the bottom, but I'm going to try and hang on to that shape there. So I end up with something that looks more like a giant seed, which I quite like. Excuse me. And of course, it would be fun to have something like that on the top. And I am going to, using a finer pen, I've still got the O1 out, the O3 rather is still uncapped. So I'm just going to pop an inner section here where I can. That one's a bit awkward, there wasn't enough space for it, but where we have a gap there, and I might put some things in that look like little seeds. They're going to be tiny, but we can do this because I've got a tinier pen. So again, I'm using S shapes here, so I'm echoing that original one. How interesting. I'm saying that because I am interested, because these are similar to some I've done in my sketchbook, but they're not. I'll come back and add some textures and details in a short while. Let's start again with an S shape. Not a very broad S shape this time. But what I'm going to do is see what happens if I add a shape here I can work with. I just feel that kind of teardrop shape fits nicely there. And I'm going to just add auras to this. Not worrying too much if they're not equidistant or they're not exactly the same shape. I'm not worried about that. I am going to bring this down like so. And then on this side, I am going to draw nice big lobes, but I'm going to put smaller ones in between, as in narrower, and a little bit shorter as well. And let's get these going smaller. I'm just allowing them to curve around as they will until I can't really fit anything in but a little blob like that. That's a fancy shell. Wouldn't it be great if we found ones like that, really? And that was all just done just by a little bit of variation of this idea, really. So that's all it is. It is an idea. So let's have a look. Every time I draw this, I'm coming up with new ones. I did do something similar to this in my sketchbook, but it's not exactly the same. So let's have a look at doing, always starting with that shape there. That seems to be the starting point, and the idea of auras and repeating shapes and connecting shapes, lobes, that kind of thing. So how about if I put a round shape there, like a pearl, and I will put a smaller one there, like like so. And perhaps I'm just going to start by putting these initial lobes on this side and seeing how that works. Or do I want the lobes to carry on at the bottom, or shall I shall do them so they go this way. I think that might feel a bit awkward, but we'll see how it works out. Because then I can just bring perhaps that around and perhaps make connections like this, because the top felt a bit odd here. I'm not sure that works, but not everything will work, will it? Because it's all an experiment. I do like that one. I just wish it was that bit wider, fatter, but again, that is just thinking about what I'm going to do. So let's have a look. Determined to fill as much of this space up as I can with variations. Here, I'm just going to draw in here that kind of pointy oval seedy shape, like so. And now I'm going to add just a couple of auras here, just to connect it down a bit. And then on this side, like that. Perhaps another one. And then that'll be my last one there. Perhaps I can add a couple more down here just to make that feel that it belongs almost. And again, perhaps a little thing coming over. Very interesting, aren't they? I'm beginning to run out of vertical space, but might do some horizontally. How about an extreme S at the bottom? That could end up being rather crazy and fun. And a much bigger aura of it, using Zentangle terminology. Okay, so this one, I'll create a kind of teardrop shape there, with a more rounded one, a bigger one. And then here, what can we do here with this? It's going to need chunky, chubby, cuddly shapes. I don't know whether this is going to work out or not. Sometimes you look at things, you think, what was I thinking? And then you think, but I can make that better if I do X, Y, or Z, or all of them, or something completely different. Still leave that as it is, because it kind of works. Perhaps this one might be a bit better if I add some aura in this one as well. It's not so bad. It's not 3 bad, really. Still got the O3 here, so let's have a look at this. There we go. So let's have a look at adding some of these aura lines, or border lines I like to call them, because they really do create a border. I keep saying this, I think I'm lost for words today in some ways, which is just a bit unusual for me. So I'm adding smaller versions of the shape inside those sections just to add some interest. I think shading, colouring, texture patterns and so on will help to bring all of these to life, So we've got that one. So let's have a look. I've got a couple more spaces. So I'll do one this way. Who says they can't live sideways? Okay. So this one, already that initial S shape all the way from the bottom to the top again. And then I've just done others where the edge is just, they're getting shorter and shorter, but they're kind of keeping the same kind of shape. Kind of. I'm not going to put another point on there, but I do want to do something here, and I think I know what I want to do. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to bring a line around that way and down. And again, I'm going to start there on that side, bring it around and down, and then that one will go quite nicely. So I've got that curving around and in. That's interesting. Actually, I quite like that one. I do. I will move my camera up in a moment so we can see it all. But that's looking not too bad at all. Interesting. That's my words of the day, isn't it? Interesting. I ought to do that repeated all the way round as the border pan. Interesting. Interesting. It is. It's curious. Yeah. One last thing. Let's have a look. So if I do that here, so I'm going to do a really exaggerated version of the S shape, but more like really like a letter S. So this one is where I'm going to on that side, and then I'm going to do the same on this side and end up with that there. Same idea, slightly different presentation of it. So I now have a page full of MaryShel, and I have a feeling now I've spent some time working with this, excuse the wobbles, that I could actually fill another page, but I'm not going to. If I do, I will share. I'm not going to do it now, that's for sure. Okie doke, so my first job will be to find some paint or other. I think paint will be quite nice. Excuse me a moment while I do that. I should know where my paints are. Yes, I've got some there. Oh, and that's the sound of my last piece of kitchen paper upstairs coming off the roll. So I'm going to have to get new ones. Right, let's get my rosa ones out. Because these are lovely and I like them. They're very dusty as well. Okay, so I haven't used them for a number of weeks. These are from Rosa Gallery. They're a beautiful set of watercolours. They come as full pans and they're relatively inexpensive, you know, in terms of that. I can't remember how much I paid for them, but I think they were less than £50. And they are beautiful, beautiful colours. But I think that will just finish these off quite nicely. And then I'm going to add the colour first to bring out shadows and highlights. And then I'll add any texture patterns afterwards to minimise any movement of the ink. There's a very good reason I want to rub my pencil lines out first. And I'm going where there are no pencil lines because this will pick up any loose pigment from the top of the ink. So it's less likely to get mixed in with the watercolour and make it a bit of an ucky shade or, you know, make a bit of a mess there. I've got a water brush that has plenty of water in it. I've got a piece of kitchen towel that I can use to just clean my brush on. And I've got enough here that I can do lovely things with. I've got some colours already mixed on the lid here. But what I'll do is I'll just move this over. I'm not going to zoom in. So hopefully you'll get enough of a view. Sorry about that. It's just moving a light over. And I'm going to use what I've got here just to start to add colour. I've got no idea what colours I want. All I know is I want to use them to bring some definition into this, but also some shadow and highlight. So just moving that there, just moving that out a bit. So I've got that kind of green there. I've got a more yellowy green I'll use in another section. And again, just adding a little bit there. darker at the bottom. Hopefully. If not, it's going to have pattern on, texture, whatever. And then that lovely greeny one then just for here. This water brush doesn't have the best point on it anymore, but it's fine, it'll work. We want to take these up to the edge. Luckily this is Canson Imagine paper, and it works quite nicely with watercolours. And I can see here where I've added some little drops of water. I've got this lovely spreading of colour, a little bit of texture coming in, so I'm going to do that in other places as well, just to tie them together rather than try and fix things. So that's quite nice. I'll leave that to dry and then I'll decide what I'm going to do with these little sections. I may use something like the Karen brush marker just to add some colour there. This one, next one, definitely going to add some purple here, and I will add more of it just to make it nice and dark in places. Okay. Spotting it on. Then I've got some turquoise blue here, kind of. I'm going to mix that with the purple to make a kind of bluey purple, this kind of lovely colour, which I'll use for other parts. Actually not too happy with that purple there, but, you know, hey-ho. It's a bit dark in comparison. Let's try and keep things lighter, because I do tend to favour paler colours when it comes to watercolour. And then I'm going to just dab on some darker colour here. Did a little bit of a dark green to that, just to make it feel that bit darker as well. Some here just to bluey up the purple a bit. And then I'll just use some of this blue in between the paler colour. Of course, I could just fill these with one colour and then trust that my texture patterns or how I add colour to them will bring the colour out. So we seem to be going for greens and purples here. That one's a very bright green. I'll add some darker green to where I want the colour to be darker and just let it spread out as it will. I'm bearing in mind that these colours do fade as they dry. Look at that one. So I'm just adding some water. Perhaps where I'd like some highlights, maybe. Using that just to add that texture in. Okie dokes. Next, let's go for some pinky colour. Just with a hint of purple, just to tone it down that little bit, or, you know, to cool it down a little bit. Again, darkest towards the bottom, and then I'm just going to let it just do what it will up to the top, just to add some colour to help to bring this out. I'm not fussing around with this, so I know that I'm going to want just a bit of darker colour there. Put the purpley colour in from earlier. Okay, let's go for an orangey colour now. Some orangey with a bit of pink. Just to change the colours, because it will be boring to do them all the same colour. So they all are different kinds of shells, and I'm going to add some pinky colour to this, or the pinky purpley colour, where I want a little bit of shadow, a little bit darker colour. I've said before, I'm not really a watercolourist. It's something that vexes me, and I think I'm just going to learn to use watercolour as a very flat form of colouring, mostly for, you know, like line and wash, where I'm not going to worry too much about shadow and highlights with the watercolour. I'm going to just let it add colour and let my line work do the rest, my pen work. So we've got quite a bit of colour in places there. Let's just add some more on this side. Just let it do what it will. I think I was picking up some of the ink off the pen, but hey ho, it is what it is, and you know, you work with it. So that's interesting. I've got a nice blend of colours there. So let me go for a little bit more of an orangey red here. And just add some of this wonderful colour here. A bit more to the bottom, to the top, and then just blend it in and out. Just let it do what it will. And again, I might just add some water here and there, drops of water, just to help to move some of the colour, perhaps leave some lighter areas, because I find that quite a fun thing to do. Okay, this next one, I'm going to head for, it's my favourite one, this one. I'm actually going to use a brownish colour. I'm going to add some orange to it just to make it, it's more of a burnt sienna than anything else. And I just think that would be quite a nice colour for this. But I am going to add some pink on top just to let it do what it will. And the same up here on this side. And then I'm going to add some pink. Just let them just blend if they want to. If they don't, that's fine. Again, there's going to be more work put in here. In the middle, I do want a dull colour, so I'm getting some blue and some of that browny colour, and I'm just mixing blue and brown just to give something that's a bit different, a bit darker perhaps, just to add that there. And around the edge, again, a bit more pink, just to add a hint of colour here, just to bring it together. I could almost leave these like this. It's looking almost like a, sweeties. Okay, a different colour. Where is my indigo? My Indiegogo, I think it's that. Oh, it is. That's a very strong indigo. So I'll use that with that bluey turquoise, and make a slightly different blue colour for this one. Oh, that's nice. I like that. It's quite a bright colour, but I do remind myself, Angela, it will dry, as it dries, it will fade. But I'm going to use some of that lighter blue as well, base. Allow them to sort of blend one into another, just to give us a very, gradation in colour and a change in colour. Any imperfections? I'm not worried. It's just getting that base colour. And I think that little leaf here just needs to be a little hint of green. Whatever reason, just feel it needs some green. Okie doke, so what colour next? Ooh. Yeah. Got some, really bright red going here. It's a kind of crimson. I'm mixing it with that brown. And I may mix it with some of the orange and pink, just to get a nice kind of warm goldeny colour. And I'm going to use that on these sections, I think. Actually, let's go over it all, is it? Including the bits in between. It's a lot easier to do that way. Just fill the whole shape in. That's nice. I've got a bit of more yellowy colour, which I think would go nicely on the other side. If you can pick up a bit more of that yellow, definitely work nicely there. So, perhaps a little bit of the darker colour along the edge there if I can. And again here is to get a darker colour where all of these come together, because that will naturally look more. I'm overworking the paper, and the pen is moving because the paper's disintegrating. This is the one thing about mixed media paper you have to be careful with. You can't overwork it. Some you can, but some Obviously this one I can't. So let me get a little bit of that indigo blue and mix that in here, just to make a darker colour. That'll do nicely. It'll go. As it dries, it'll fade, but the colours will go. Okay. This one down here, I really love this one. But I'm going to make a quite yellowy green, I think. But less yellowy green than above. I just think that'd be really quite nice for the top part. And for the bottom, I think I may just darken it down a little bit and add a bit more of this darker green that I've got here. Like that. That'd be nice. You see my hand disappear, it's just because I'm cleaning my brush off on the kitchen towel. Really ought to remember to keep these if I colour them all eventually, because they'd make quite nice collage papers actually. This one looks almost like a strange creature curled up, doesn't it? Okay, so I could do with some, I've got a purple there. A different purple here though. So it's more of a mauve. I'm adding a little bit of pink to it just to lighten it up. This colour looks quite opaque compared to the others, so plenty of water with it. But I almost feel I want to give this area one colour. I'm making it quite dark and I don't really want it that dark. That's better, just tap it up. And then I'm going to go with more pinky colour along this section. It really does look like a very stylised dragon. How weird. And then for this other part, I'm going to use some turquoise to mix in with that lavender or that lilac-y colour. And just add that. Perhaps a bit more of the lilac. That'll do. Again, if it's too dark, I'll just come back and pat it up or add some water and allow it to do what it will. Like so. And I'm making a bit of a mess as I am just fussing around too much. I think that's why it's good for me to remember that with this paper, because it means I'm not going to fuss around as much as I normally would do. Look at this, 57 minutes already. Yay. Said me, was going to keep it under an hour. Yeah, well, yeah. And I say, yeah, like, oh, this colour here. Add the colour, Angela, don't fuss. Is the key here. Just add it, let it be. It's Beatles' song, isn't it? Let it be. I'm not going to try and sing. Just adding little bits of slightly darker colour where I would like a little bit of darkness. This is my favourite here. I'm sure I'll be able to replicate it because I can deconstruct what I've done, kind of. And I'm going to leave that one to last. Here, I think I just want to have a different shade of green, perhaps one that's a bit more bluey. I'm so glad I've been watching, don't ask me who, but I tend to watch watercolouring videos from time to time. Oh, it's green again. It must be a green day today. Oh, they're a band, aren't they? To help. There's no hope for me at all. And seeing people, the advice about mixing colours is use what you've got on your palette. If you use a small number of colours, you can make lots of different ones and they will always work together because you're using the same group of colours for the same artwork, as it were. And I'm taking that to heart and not worrying about the mess I make if I use up all of one colour. Use what I've got. And, if I don't like a colour, if the colours aren't what I want, then I'll start mixing new ones. The problem comes when I realise I actually want a colour that is a little bit different. or trying to, not different, but the same, and trying to remember which colours I'd put there. I guess it doesn't matter really. So I've got some lovely, different green going on here. I'm going to put quite a bright yellowish green in. If I can get a brightish yellowish green into my little pearl, a little seed there, because I think that will be lovely. There we are, just adding some water there to give a highlight. Down there, and perhaps some up there. While it's, some of them I'm going to just move the paint. That will spread out. And then down here I want something, do I want bluer or greener? Let's go a bit greener, a bit more bluey green. And just something that will, oh, that looks like this, doesn't it? So I can add a bit of darkness there. And perhaps a little bit more down the bottom here. That's fine. And then my last one would kind of like a nice pinky, purpley colour. Ooh, that's nice. Ooh, that's very shell-like. It's that kind of purpley, pinky, browny colour that you see on shells. I don't know what colour you call it, but, you know, shell pink? I don't know. I'll never be able to replicate this colour, but do I mind? Not at all, as I have plenty left on my palette for others that I could do. So I'm going to use that there. And then for my little pearls, I think I may use this lovely golden pink I've got here, so a more golden colour perhaps. It's not really doing it, so I'll pick up some more gamboge. So I'm sure it was it wasn't gamboge I used, but I'm going to. Just to give a slightly different colour there. And there we go. I'm done with colouring. I'm not doing any more. That's it. Any shadows I put around these are going to be in a different medium. Excuse me, I have got tissue here to blow my nose. Excuse me. Gosh. So I've got this. So my next job is I'm going to find that 01. I am going to take my heat tool to this just to make sure everything is nice and dry. This is not a hairdryer. If you tried to use this on your hair, you would burn your skin and, you know, your scalp and everything else, and perhaps set fire to your hair. It's designed for craft. It's a heated craft tool. I've had it for donkey's years. It looks grungy because it's got paint and glue and everything on there. So what I'll do, excuse the movement inwards, but for whatever reason, the zoom in and out on the thingy isn't working. I'm going to have to find out how that works. So here, what I'm going to do with this one is I am going to make these little borders kind of checkerboard. So I'm just going to put stripes of black, and I will come back with, I've got a white pen just to highlight the lighter areas. So I think that'll be quite nice. Tell you what I could do with as well is just another very fine border there. It just feels odd that it's on the edge. And I'm not going to do the other ones then, actually. I'm going to leave them as they are with the background colour showing through. Okay, here, this here, I do want to give myself a bit of a border around it, but I'm going to fill this with tipple, just to make it that much darker. And I may very well add a few white dots inside these if I can find a fine white. I've got a souffle. I'll have a look in my pencil case if I can find it to see if I've got a different white gel pen there. And then some of these, not everyone, I think the darker ones, I'm going to put little curved lines to suggest that this is kind of curving, that these aren't flat, that they have some curvature to them. Now, if I had a lot more time, because it took about 2 hours to upload yesterday's video. It's almost like YouTube wants us to do constant lives or whatever, which I get carried away. I lose sense of time. I do with this, mind you. Then it may be that lives will be the way I go, but who knows? I don't. I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing here because it feels almost like I'm adding things that it's making it too dark, too dull. But we shall see. This one, I am going to add seeds one behind each other here in this little section. Coloured pencils might be an idea to bring some shading into this. And I do know where my collection of coloured pencils currently is. But what I think I might do, I'm going to leave this one empty, but I think I might do the same thing for this one. Now, I'm not going to add patterns to all of these here and now because the video would end up being about 3-4 hours long perhaps. But what I will do is when I finished it, I will post it to social media. So I'll finish it while the video's processing, uploading and doing whatever else YouTube does to it. There we go. And I'll do the same on this side. I'm going to do the larger sections, so there we go. So that I like that one because I like that I've left large sections still empty of pattern and colour, just to help that colour, to help bring some dimension in and volume in. And I quite like that. Okie dokes. This one I'm very tempted to leave just as it is. What I might do is just add some little circles perhaps that lead down to the darkest part. And what I'm doing at the top is I'm leaving a semicircle there, just as if it's connected, as if there's a change here that's happening. I've never done that before, but it seems to work nicely. Rather than just having that there, just finishing it off with just having that seed or whatever you want to call it at the bottom, just connecting it in a slightly different way, as if, yeah, we've got a change here in the way that this is all working together, and it seems to work nicely. I like that. That's all I'm going to do to that one. This one, I've got this shape here, and I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put these in. I'm going to colour them in alternately in stripes. Yeah, like that. And I'm not sure I want to do anything else anywhere else. What I might do though is just bring some little wisps up. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing well, because I've lost, my computer's decided to send itself to a screen saver, which I've actually told it not to, but not that it's paying any attention to me, to look at the settings again. And not only does it go to a screensaver, it's decided to lock the screen, which is annoying. So I'm just putting very fine lines on with a little ball at the top, a little dot at the top, a little seed. And again, it's another way of just adding that shadow to places without cross-hatching. It looks deliberate. I'm not sure I like that, but it's okay. I can always do more. Okay, this one here, I'm going to turn this into a kind of bead or pearl, and I've done concentric semicircles. So I start with one that's almost a full semicircle, one inside that's a little bit smaller and a tiny one there. And it just makes me think that this is, you know, it is kind of, it has volume. It has volume, it's not flat, and highlights will help. I'm just going back on this one and adding some inky glue, just adding a nice smooth curve where these sections meet, because that will add darkness as well and will increase that feeling of shadow and dimension. So I don't want to add anything more to that. I like it as it is, though I am tempted to here along these ones in some way. Perhaps I can just put little dots along the edge where I want shadow. Rather than trying to fit lines in, let's just put little dots there and see if that works. It may. Almost like stippling, but I'm using the dots on the line as a pattern. Very simple. Effective? I don't know. Only time will tell. But that just pushes that in a different direction, I guess. Okie dokes. Any others that I'm desperate to add? This one's a good one for adding pattern to, simply because I've got lovely big spaces there. And I think with this one, go to this one first, because I did want to put little seeds in these sections. And I will go and use a white gel pen, or maybe even, these are very tiny mine, so I might have trouble getting white in here, but gold I certainly most probably would, but I might try gold because that would look rather lovely on this. You know, I have a bit of a thing for gold and silver. Silver would be quite nice with the blue, but gold would look nice as well, or the bluey green. This one I'm going to do, I'm not going to do that central line with these. I really want these in the middle of each lobe. And yep, it takes a little wee while. It takes a bit of hand-eye coordination. I do draw very small, as you can see. But if you draw any of these bigger, find it easier to add these in. But I wanted to fill my page. Okay. Just this one here. That's nice. That's added something really lovely to that. And I do quite like these little dots. They're not the best in the world, but they're quite cute. Okay. That one I said I wanted to add some pattern to, and I feel in the need for some of this curvy pattern, which I think is a variation of Shattuck. But there are so many things you could pop in these sections. But this is quite delicate, really, and it's not, though it's ink intensive in some ways, because I'm using such a fine pen. And as the sections get bigger, I'm going to make the gaps between the lines bigger, so it lets the colours shine through. All this is doing is adding some texture and some interest. So, and just helps to bring, you know, again, it's that dimension, isn't it, almost, of bringing something a bit different to this. The top needs something. I think it actually needs a little cap on it because I don't like the way these patterns go right to the edge. And if I'd thought about it in advance, I could have done this and coloured it in and so on. But I didn't. So I'm going to leave that one as it is. I'll finish that another time. Okay, pencils. Coloured pencils. Luke, come on. Where's the handle? Hiding down. Ugh. Talk about a big pile of coloured pencils. Okie dokes. So I'm going to want some coloured pencils. All right, so let's have a look. I want something that will, go with some of these greens. This is quite a dark, oh no, it's too dark. I want something greenish, but a little bit darker than that. That one might do it. Obsidian green. It's a bit darker than I'd like, but I am just going to add some darkness at the base just to help with the shading, and perhaps some under here as well. That's just bringing those shadows out and helping there. And I may want to actually use a lighter green. Excuse my arm as I go back and forth. It's a nice yellowy green. This one. This is called Sunflower. It's definitely a green colour. But if I can use that in these sections, rather than trying to fit in something that's like a watercolour with a brush that is too broad, I can do that. And what's more, if I can find a light colour, this is Castle Art, this is pastel tones, this one's Mimosa, then I may be able to go over the top and just add a highlight as well, and perhaps on this, because if I don't press too hard, then the colour underneath will show through and we'll just get that nice mixing. So for that one, I've done that. This one here, I've got a light green. This is Prismacolor. It's a grey-green light, which I think may actually darker than the blue here, but may just work nicely. It will definitely be lighter than this. So I'm going to see if I can get some highlights on this. She says, perhaps. Might need to use a white as well. So let's go find a white. There we go. Colour Soft. I've got so many types of coloured pencils, it gets ridiculous. Colour Softs are nice because A, they are soft, and B, they are quite opaque, you know. Not as opaque as Chalk Pastel or the ones that Zentangle use perhaps, but opaque enough for me. That's good enough. So I could keep on going like this, adding shading and highlights, but the one thing I wanted to do was to bring out some shadow. And I want a brownish colour that isn't too dark, but that would tie in. This is burnt ochre, just to bring some shading, to make it look like these are floating in the paper. So I'm not going to do them all, I'm just going to do one. I always put shadow to the left and bottom. And what I'm doing is I'm following the shape of this, kind of trying to get the same kind of shape going. As if this is just floating that little bit. We've got little bits of bottoms there. We can just add a little bit of shading in. And there I've got some shading. In fact, I most probably can do it just that little bit wider and a little bit lighter. I'm not worried about this, whether it's a perfectly coloured. If it's a bit rough around the edges, that's fine, because the background's a bit rough and ready, as it were. But it will just help to lift things. And it's nice to use a colour rather than grey. This tones in with my background, which is why I chose this colour. Well, partly because it's the first brown that came to hand that I thought would work, but also once I saw the name and everything, I knew, yeah, that'll be fine. It's a nice colour, and it's sort of like should work quite nicely with everything. I'm going to make the shadow that little bit darker right up close to my MaryShels, just to really lift the edge off the paper, so it's not everywhere is going to be like so. And it's almost like drawing around and then adding shadow to that line. Now I've worked that out. I forget how to do these things. It's been a long time. We've got that going on here now, and just take a bit of time, just working back and forth, just making sure that I've got enough of a shadow there that it looks like it's floating. And I could do that with all of them. Is there one I particularly enjoy doing? I think I'd enjoy doing this one. I've got some shadow on that side. Definitely got shadow here, around here. Even that helps, even that little bit helps to lift it off the paper. But it's really much nicer when you make it wider where you need it wider. And it's just using a very light hand and allowing the pencil to go on the paper. I'm not trying to get a smooth colouring. I'm just trying to get something that will just lift it off and help. Yeah, so I'll leave my pencil out. The last thing I'm going to do before I sign off for today, put those down and out the way, just give me that bit more space, is white pen. Now then, I'm sure I brought my pencil case up. Can't find it though. I'm sure it was here. I'm sure I have my pencil case. Oh well, no worries. Because I've got this size of Posca, but this one is also a 0.7, but it's got more of a point on it than the other one. So I am just going to get this working. There we go. And I'm going to go and add hints of white where I want really bright contrast. Now, because there's so little distress ink on the paper, surprisingly, this won't pick it up. It might pick some of the watercolour up, not much. Adding a couple of little spots in there, but I am going to add some spots just along the edge here in between these lines, just to bring out that highlight. I'm going to do the same here, trying not to make the spots too big. Again, a gentle hand, gentle touch, soft hand, and it just adds those highlights. I can add highlights on this, on these as well, just to, again, bring those out and give them some dimension. Trying not to make them too big, too many of them, just enough. Bearing in mind, I'm always looking for the right hand side. I have messed up in places there, but I will work it out. So we've got those, and this one, I'm going to put dots all the way up the centre, so the black and the white will go there. And here, I'm going to almost echo that shape and put white on the other side. This one, well, I've got the pen out, I'm going to put some white in there. This one, I so want to put white in these. See, I could have just coloured these in black, I've realised, rather than spending all that time putting the little blue areas in, but it is what it is. This is how art often goes, is you think you're happy with one thing, which I was, but I just really feel this could really work quite nicely. And again, it's bringing that highlight, that contrast in that hopefully will bring things to light. Bearing in mind that I don't need white all the way along these sections, and there might be those little bits underneath showing through. I'm going to pop a little white dot there, but it just brings it together. This one, I'm just going to add, oops, just thought, oh no, I'm going to put my hand in white. White dots, just around the edge, where it's going to be raised the highest, and just have a couple just to fade away, tiny ones like that, just to bring the white back into this, the highlights. I've got a lot of work to do on this. Let me just move you up. Oops, there we go. I've got a lot of work to do on this. I really have. It's not complete yet, but I will work on it as the video's uploading and I go about my day today. And when I've done it, I will post an image of it. It's not very straight, is it, this? Let's have a look. See if I can get it straighter. Have a decent image of it that I can put on the front of the video. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you gave MaryShel a go. I looked at it and I thought, no. I tried drawing it first and I thought, oh God, I'm not going to do this one. But I persevered in my sketchbook where I've got variations, and here I've got even more variations. So it's a fun kind of method to play around with and allow you, like me, I've allowed myself to go with the flow, to use the basic essence of the tangle, which is that inner S shape and lobes, and just see how I can put them together. I'm sure some of these may look like other tangles that have been done, but I don't know what all the tangles are because there's got to be thousands of them by now. Not just from Zentangle, but from other people. But it's fun to create. It's fun to see what will happen. And some of these I certainly will be looking at adding to any kind of almost like a library or a reference book of patterns and shapes I like, which I really do need to start doing. I start them and then they get used for other things. So it's almost like I need to do this so that after I've done a drawing, I can put things in I particularly like. Yeah, like that's going to get done quickly. But anyway, I'm going to say thank you for joining me. Say I hope you've enjoyed this. Give it a go with whatever materials you've had. But I thought you might like to see distress ink backgrounds with a stencil again. I haven't done one for a long time on camera. Drawing, the ideas, the variations. And I use watercolour. Use whatever you have. If you don't like colour, use graphite or chalk pastels. Anything you have. Just enjoy the process. And even if things don't work out, well, you've learnt from it. And sometimes it's looking at it going, well, actually, I like that, but that could be done differently. I think I did that here. And sometimes I thought, what on earth had I done with this one? And yet it's actually worked out okay. You know, I want to put an eye there and create something that looks a bit like a curled up dragon, or something you'd find under the sea, that kind of thing. Or, it's quite cute, really. It gives me that feeling of a weird animal, or a cute animal, or a fantastic, as in fantasy, or imaginative thing that lives in a different world. Just like all of these shells, really. That one, I've certainly drawn things like that before. That's just appeared. That's interesting because that's a nice way to draw that kind of shell. Anyway, I'm wittering. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you hopefully tomorrow for day 3. Until then, look after yourselves and be creative. Bye for now. Ta-ra!